I'm Lisa Wren. I'm an accredited practicing dietitian, and this is the 5th in a series of videos that we're talking about how to eat healthily. What's it actually look like if you're not dieting and you're starting just to make some healthy decisions? And this episode is about portion size, which is really quite a critical thing when we're talking about weight loss or certainly maintaining a weight. And there's some interesting studies across the world basically, and there's a thing called the French paradox. And the thought is that, wow, the French people eat quite a high-fat diet, and yet they have a low incidence of heart disease. And so we're wondering why that sort of happens. And I think that we got some insight. If someone was telling me about some French students that they had come to visit, and they looked at the size of the meals that were available in Australia, and they said, wow, they are massive. You people eat quite a lot. So I think the French paradox might be partly about that they eat smaller serve sizes. And so we get into talking and thinking about how satisfied are you after a meal? And I guess what we're used to feeling is potentially really overfull. Because when we're young, how many times were you told, finish everything on your plate? You're not going to get up until that plate is empty. So we're sort of taught to override our natural hunger and fullness symptoms. And so where this leads is us that we actually get used to the sense of fullness, this perhaps over fullness and slightly discomfort as actually something we're trying to achieve when we finish a meal. However, the French are perhaps taught that when I stop feeling hungry, I'll stop eating, regardless of the amount of food that's left on the plate. So I think there's something really important for us there is to know, hang on, maybe the amount that I'm eating is simply to get to this degree of fullness that I'm used to. And that if I eat any less than that, I'm going to be hungry. But I wonder if that's actually true. What we do know is you certainly can eat too much healthy food. So people are often a little bit perplexed and say, hang on, well, I'm eating healthily. I don't understand why I'm not losing weight. And so it is this thing of, what's the portion size? What degree of fullness are you actually aiming to achieve at the end of a meal? So there was actually research done by a guy called Brian Wansink in America, and he looked at feeding two different groups of people different snack sizes. Now that was his aim of the outcome, but they weren't aware of what he was doing. But one group was fed a small snack and the other group was fed a really large snack. And at the end of the study, they were just asked, when you think back to that snack we gave you, how are you feeling now? Are you satisfied? Are you satisfied? You're not hungry anymore. And both groups, the group that actually said, yep, I'm satisfied after this small snack, and the other group that had the large serve size said, yeah, we're satisfied. So both groups were equally satisfied after very different size of snacks. So that got me sort of thinking. And I believe if we think about this as degrees, there's degrees of fullness and satisfaction. So at one end, if you've got 0 for really quite empty and hungry, and the other end is 6, stuffed full, after Christmas dinner, I'm really, really full and can't fit another thing in, perhaps need a lie down. Now, I think that if we look at this as 6 degrees of satisfaction, this is 0, this is 6, stuffed full. But in the middle here, what we also have is degrees where we're still satisfied, but the portion size is very different. So if we start to think about, if I'm trying to lose weight and I'm already eating healthily, so I need to cut down on my portion size, start to be curious about how full are you after a meal. And if you picture it, that let's say you think, okay, let's make the assumption that I'm at number 5 after a meal, which means I'm really quite full. But if I actually decrease the portion size to a 3, then I'm eating less food on my plate, but that I'm still in that realm of being satisfied. I think the fear of hunger often drives us to add that extra spoonful in, and I think we need to be a bit more curious about our hunger levels and making the assumption that this happens on a scale, but we're still going to be satisfied the lower down we are on the scale. So there's the challenge to you to start to decrease your portion sizes slightly. I am certainly not talking about decreasing it to a size where you're hungry and gurgling in the stomach, but decreasing them to a portion size that you're moving yourself down the scale to say, you know what? I'm satisfied. I'm no longer hungry. So if we can do a little bit more like the French do and start to disregard what our parents told us about, you must finish everything on your plate. This has implications for waste, but if so, portion yourself out another meal for leftovers that you can have the next day. Helps with meal planning. You don't have to think about what you're going to do there, but you don't use yourself as the rubbish bin, which I think is a really important thing. If you're eating it because you don't want to waste it and then wondering why you're not losing weight, then there's a bit of a problem there. So hopefully you can see here that maybe you're just used to feeling fuller and you could still be satisfied by having a smaller portion. So I encourage you to try and dish up yourself just a little bit less and be curious. Am I satisfied, or did I overdo it and am I hungry? There's a balance there to be had, and I encourage you to experiment with that. Hope that's been helpful, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.